this consciousness of the lower mind and this or that thinking, and the solution is not cerebral and coming from your heart, and how that's actually the more of a brain than the brain is, and the intelligence of the heart and the field of the heart, and how to tap into that through the emotions and gratitude and appreciation and love as being the highest order, and the how is none of your business.
Yeah. Mental masturbation will not lead to the creation or procreation of anything of value.
All right, here we are. We are back.
Dun, 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 dun.
We are back. And we are on a roll now. Ignite the King podcast. It's time to get into it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Welcome, Russell Reynolds.
And welcome, Michael Diamond.
G. Russell Reynolds.
Yeah. That was it. That was the thing.
Oh, yes. For those of you who don't know that are tuning in, Russell was racking his brain trying to figure something out. He probably can't even tell you now.
I had a thought. I'm like, oh, what was that thing I wanted to say? Yeah, it was addressing the G, because that seems to be a topic of conversation. So if I could just tell that story real quick. So my first name is George. On George Russell Reynolds. I was named George after my father and his father before him. Again, as I said in episode 1, my dad left when I was 3, so we had a fractured relationship for a lot of years, and there were years where we didn't even talk. But we had begun, reconnecting and healing. And when he was, as I'm an adult, in my 40s, and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And when that happened, and I realized he wasn't going to be around for much longer, I put the G back in front of my name to honor him and facilitate healing between us before he passed. I didn't just switch my name, because I always went by Russell. I didn't just switch my name to George, because after 40 some odd years, people would be like, what, who? So it's G. Russell Reynolds. And it did facilitate healing between us. I got to spend his last days with him before he died. And he actually, one of my most treasured gifts, he was a Marine in World War II. Both he and my grandfather were Marines in World War II. Wow. And again, that's also dating me, but we already said I'm 55 years old. But
we'll see if we can mention that every episode.
He gave he gave me his dog tag from being a Marine on his deathbed. That's one of my most treasured memories. But that's the G, because sometimes people go like, do I call you G or Russell or G Russell or G Money? Sure. I'm like, don't say G Money, please. I'm way too white for that.
And make sure if it's Russell, it's 2 L's. Let's get that clear.
For the love of God, if you ever meet a Russell that spells it with 1 L, shoot him. He's a doppelganger. It's not real. Russell is always spelled with 2 S's and 2 L's.
Well, to add on to this G thing, and to be in full transparency, my full name is Greg Michael Diamond, G Michael Diamond. Right. And years ago, I adopted my middle name as my first name, so Michael Diamond. So I can't be G Michael Diamond if it makes you feel more comfortable.
We should be G Michael Diamond and G Russell Reynolds. Then people will think it's a rap show.
I went with the DR, had to pay a lot for that. So
yes.
I'm going to use it.
Dr. Michael Diamond. Doctor.
Do you concur? Again, we get those movie references in. That'll be our little hidden trivia in these episodes.
We're trusting that most of our audience is in the same age bracket.
Well, in a range for sure.
In a range.
And if not, it should be required watching.
Right.
So let's get into it for today. We are really starting to open up now what men's work is, what Ignite the King is, and what we really want to share with you today, and the value we want to bring is pitfalls. And we talk about 5 pitfalls that all men need to be aware of, 5 blind spots that we need to make visible, because when we don't, it leads to challenge, it leads to pain, it leads to destructive behaviors, fractured relationships and families. These are sort of 5 energies that all men will face on some level. And the question I'll pose at the beginning as we go through these 5 today is, which one do you identify with the most? Because at the end of this episode, we're going to have some actionable things. And one of those things is going to be able to really identify where your set point is in these 5 things. And again, we'll all experience some level of all these.
Yeah, and Michael has a tendency to be a little more PC than I am. I'll just say if you hear all 5 of these pains of men and you tell me that none of them are affecting you in any way, shape, or form, I will tell you you're full of shit. I call BS on that 100% because all of us have been victim to one of these at one point in our lives or another, and probably right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not PC though, but I'll
You know what? You're more the negotiator. You're more the diplomat. That's the word I'm looking for. You're
yeah,
more the
there you go.
diplomat than I am.
I like to sneak up on you and then like put it right in your face.
Right.
Russell will be charging at you on the field with a battle axe and a helmet, and you know he's coming, but he's coming. We have a different way of getting to the same place, and that's one of the beautiful things that works in our relationship is we get to really bring a holistic approach to healing. We'll call it that.
Yeah. Sometimes being direct is not necessarily a good thing. Like, honey, does this dress make me look fat? No, your fat makes you look fat. Bad idea, guys. Don't answer that way.
Yeah, that's always a trick question. So these 5 pains, I mean, we're talking about them so early on in our Ignite journey here on the podcast because these are absolutely essential, fundamental to that self-assessment, the self-growth, to awareness around what's going on in your life and how it's messing you up, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So number 1, this is a big one we see and all of these are based on the men that we've worked with, obviously with our own lives. And these are the ones that just keep coming back. Number 1's the pleaser. That is shadow personality, if we want to call it that or behavior that a lot of men fall into. And this is basically wanting to make everyone happy. It comes from a good place, and there's shadow places it comes from as well. We want to make everyone happy, so we try to please everyone, and you can't make everyone happy all the time. We know that. So everyone gets about 70%. You're doing a C, and to yourself as well. And the thing about it is no one's ever happy.
I can't remember who it was. Somebody, some ancient wisdom, somebody older, wiser than me, who said, "The man who is a friend to everyone, is an enemy to himself."
Yeah.
And while you say it comes from a good place, I'll say it because it was one of my biggest patterns. That pleaser energy it comes from wanting to be loved. It comes from wanting to be accepted. It comes from wanting to be enough. It comes from wanting to be not rejected, not abandoned. For me, that was a big piece of it. So it's
I think you're speaking for every man here.
Yeah. Well, I just want to own it. If somebody goes, well, that's not where it comes from for me. Cool. That's where it came from for me.
Yeah.
Because I had that core belief of not good enough, and that eventually everybody was going to leave me. Once they saw who I really was, they were all going to leave. Yeah. So the more I could go da 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 and do this whole song and dance to please and entertain, the less likely, or at least the longer I could stave off them leaving.
Absolutely. The way it showed up for me is around boundaries and not holding boundaries with people and saying yes when I really wanted to say no, and conversely saying no when maybe I really wanted to say yes to something. For me, most likely, and how it showed up is minimizing things when things would happen that would break those boundaries. Boundaries, by the way, that I never actually verbalized, but held internal and judged people for not following them. Anyone relate to that out there?
Nobody honored the boundaries you didn't establish. That's weird.
Right. And then got upset when I became a tyrant and tried to tell them. really falls right into that pleaser mode.
Do you not understand the words that have never come out of my mouth?
So this pleaser energy is rampant. Let's just say that. And, there is part of it, as I said, that does come from good intent. I think as men, as we talked about, we're the providers and the protectors. We want to create that safe space. We're very, in a way, in tuned to our kingdom and who resides in that kingdom. We'll talk about that when we deep dive around the king energy. So go ahead, man. I feel you.
I'm glad. Well, I'm glad you said that, provider and protector, because this is where that shadow pleaser energy can come in ways that we think we're pleasing, but we're actually not. So you men in relationship, or you're dating somebody, you buy her all these things to please her, but what she really needs is fucking boundaries.
Right.
Or the protector, the shadow of the protector. That guy look at you, and you're gonna fight some guy in a bar because he looked at your woman. She looks good. That's a compliment, bonehead. Right? If he comes and grabs her ass, yeah, different story. But if some guy just looks and you're so insecurely jealous that you're willing to just beat anybody's ass that gives your woman a second look, you think that's protector energy. It's not.
Yep.
Right. So this is where that pleaser can really mutate into something ugly.
Well, you said it: insecurity, jealousy, and ego. You mentioned in there, and these are kind of nuanced things within the pleaser to really be aware of, because you're, again, hits on that core wound. You said, like, I'm not enough, right? So all of these pains we're describing today, these 5 pains of men, 5 pitfalls, ultimately come back to those wounds, right? This is the expression of it. So these are why we bring these in, because you're like, okay, I'm doing that guy right now, and see it that way. How we often talk about with the men in our brotherhood, our mastermind group, is, try that version on. Look at it through that version. You are not just one version of you. In fact, there's 10,000 versions of you existing simultaneously, multidimensionally, right? Let's just get that out there right now.
Go quantum. Go quantum.
Oh, I'll go quantum. So you can flicker between all those different versions. So there's times you're being the pleaser.
Right.
Just own that.
On
right?
that point, yeah, Michael, if I can jump in on that point, I think it's really important not to create your identity going, I am a pleaser. No, you're doing pleaser right now. Right.
It's a verb.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe we should pause there for a moment, because I am, as you and I talk about often, is a power. Whatever you put after I am, you are claiming that in who you are.
Yeah.
Be careful with the words that you're saying. It's called spelling for a reason.
Yeah. So here's a cool concept. And I want to be clear. While I would consider myself a Christian, I do not consider myself a biblical scholar or an expert or a really good at that. But somebody said to me once that whichever commandment it is that thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain has nothing to do with saying, GD this, GD that, so not to offend any Christians listening. But in the beginning, God said, I am that I am. So the words I am are literally a declaration of divinity. They are a calling forth of your cosmic creative potential into whatever follows those words. So if it's stupid, broke, idiot, what are you doing? What are you creating in your life? Think of I am as your spell casting. Like this is your affirmation, and you're calling forth. If I am is the name of God, wouldn't you be respectful and reverent as to what you put behind those words?
Yeah. Agreed. And same with emotion. When we describe emotion, men will often say, I am angry. I am sad.
Nope.
And this is where we say, make it a verb. You're doing anger right now. You're doing sadness. As Russell said in one of the first episode, emotion is energy in motion, emotion. Mm-hmm. Emotion's purpose physiologically is to rapidly shift your physiologies for change, to ready the body for instantaneous change. Emotions come on and they're instant. If you hold on to emotion or express emotion for more than a minute, even, you've now created the story about that emotion. If I had asked you to do anger for a minute and be in a total rage, you'd be completely exhausted after 60 seconds. So if you're holding on to anger, even low grade anger, which if there's such a thing, then you're basically you have the story about being angry at that point, because you can't sustain. If you actually just felt the emotion of anger to its fullest about whatever was going on, that would radically change your perspective on what's happening, which is our acknowledgement piece of AAA, by the way, a little foreshadowing into that work. Right. But once we become aware of a problem or a shadow or a challenge, then we got to feel it. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. Anything else you want to say on the pleaser?
That's really it. And again, that quote really stuck with me. The man who is a friend to everyone is an enemy to himself. You can't please everyone all the time. And in fact, if you are, you're really not accomplishing anything of substance in your life.
Yeah. Let's get into the next one. Yeah. This is another, again, these are the 5. So I'm going to say they're big on every one because these are the 5. The lone wolf. And there's so much to unpack here. By your sigh exhale, Russell, I could tell you have some things to share on this. Maybe I'll set it up a little bit for you.
We both do. Here's the cold reality. Lone wolf dies first. All right. Lone wolf dies first. The wolf is a pack animal. They are a family. They are a tribe. They are a unit. If there is a lone wolf in nature, he has been kicked out of the pack.
Yep.
To go and die by himself. Why has this become a tenet of masculinity? Like, this is something we should strive for, to be the lone wolf. Now, we don't want to be codependent emotionally, financially, or any other way, but we're nobody is truly independent where you need no one. I don't need anybody emotionally. I don't need anybody for this. That's some bullshit. We want to be interdependent. Not independent, interdependent, where we are fully capable of existing on our own, but we have that community. We have that tribe. Yep. We have that network. We have that brotherhood, right? Because, it's like the self-made millionaire. Bullshit. There is no such thing. Every millionaire on the planet has had a team of people working for them, with them. Name one gold medal athlete or A-list athlete that didn't have a coach or a team. And you're like, well, what about a solo sport like boxing? Okay, that guy still had a coach, still had a team. Nobody is completely independent.
Yeah. Well,
unless they're severely wounded.
The way I see this showing up with men, as far as I agree with what you've said, but the way I see it showing up is isolation.
Mm-hmm.
When men are faced with challenge or they're going through their stuff, they isolate.
Yeah.
And they hold it in. And whether that's coming from ego of, I don't want to share my problems, I want to give the facade or the mask that everything's okay, or I'm fine. By the way, fine stands for fucked up, irrational, neurotic, and emotional. You're anything but fine.
Say it again.
Fucked up, irrational, neurotic, and emotional. That's what fine is.
F-I-N-E.
Yeah. Wow. And I had this thing in my private practice, in my chiropractic offices, where if someone came in saying they were fine, good, or okay, more often than not, they were anything but fine, good, or okay.
That's code red.
That is definitely, ears start to perk up for sure. So there's this isolation thing that happens for men when they become challenged, and they want to hold it in, and you want to hold it in. I'm going to call you out, whoever's listening to this, where this is showing up, because this is most of us. You hold it in, and by the way, this definitely leads to disease or dis-ease in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing it down, repressing it down like a trash compactor. Again, dating myself because I don't think those things exist anymore. Pushing it down and holding it in till, as Russell shared earlier, you implode or explode. So the lone wolf, and here's the thing, and Russell mentioned it as well, community, that's the antidote.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have Ignite the Kings, why we have a Brotherhood, it's why we do our in-person immersions, because we are in a society now where having tribe, and Russell said wolves are pack animals, humans are pack animals.
Yep.
We're tribal animals.
Yep.
Right? We flourish in community. We need one another. And through this process of awakened masculinity, I believe we're redefining what that is, because men have been meeting in circles for millennia.
Right.
So what we're talking about is nothing new. We're just bringing back what once was that worked and bringing it to the modern day. So this idea of being a lone wolf in your life, it's not going to work. Yeah. There's no pride in failing alone.
Right. And what are the beliefs that fuel that lone wolf pattern? I'm not good enough. Nobody cares. I'll just be a burden, or it's a sign of weakness to need anybody. All of those are bullshit.
Yeah, and that's a big one. And to lay the harsh truth out there, so many men out there are suffering in silence, and so many men are doing the worst thing by taking their own life and being
Permanent
selfish.
Solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah, and the trail of grief that leaves behind, if you have a family or loved ones, even if you don't, it's not the route to go.
Yeah. Whatever story is going on in your head that tells you that's a viable option, it's a lie. It's a lie.
And if that hits a chord and you reach out for help, get that help, because we can't have any more fatherless homes.
Right. And the suicide rate amongst men, I mean, we see it in our military. It was what, every 22 seconds there was that push-up challenge going around.
Yeah, every 22 a day.
Every 22, yeah.
22 veterans a day.
Veterans a day committing suicide. And in men, just overall, suicide rate is way higher than it is in women.
2024 worldwide, I think it's 300,000.
Yeah.
Total.
Compared to women.
And much more men than women.
Right. Yeah. And why is that? Is it because we're just hardwired for suicide? No. It's because of these pains that go unaddressed. Because men don't have the courage or the vulnerability or the awareness to reach out to create that community. So, guys, there's a different way.
Yeah. And this is also a cultural, generational thing. You know, I look back to my father's generation, literally called the silent generation. No one wanted to hear from the kids. There's a war going on. We don't have time for your bullshit. Right. So it wasn't in the culture. Even the word wellness is less than 30 years old. And look what wellness centers have become.
Right.
We won't go there right now. But so this concept of looking at your stuff and doing the work, although has been around. I mean, we talk about Jungian psychology and shadow work, and you know, that was the 1930s, and he was considered the father of analytical psychology. But as a thing within the culture, men haven't been around other men, and the fact is, men think no one gives a shit anyway. So why would they need to do anything?
Yeah, not true. Not true.
Yeah.
And if you look beyond the lone wolf, or rather, look within. The statements, I'm hurting, I'm scared, I'm lonely. I promise you that those are true in some aspect or another.
We can tell you from the men that we work with that every time a man shows that level of vulnerability, the level of trust men have in him goes way up.
Way up.
Not the opposite. When we think love is going to be withdrawn, actually more love is given. More trust is given. Literally the opposite of the fears that we have by allowing ourselves to open up. And we also want to acknowledge that a lot of you men have been wounded, have had traumas, that have reasons to shut down, to guard, to protect, to put up those masks and force fields around you. And as Russell said, it's a temporary solution, or a permanent solution
to a temporary problem.
Yeah. So don't lone wolf it.
Yeah.
Find your community, find your tribe. It's why we have this podcast, why we have our brotherhood, because we need to be a voice out there.
Right. We got a Facebook page. Even if you just jump on the page,
right?
You know, let yourself be seen. Yep. You don't have to dump all of your dirty laundry and all of your trauma and drama, but just show up. Just be seen. Just go, hey, I'm here.
Start the work.
Yeah.
Let's move on to number 3. I'm not going to say it's a big one, but it's a big one.
They're all big ones.
Living in your head. And what we mean by that, the classic phrase we hear from every man, I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to bring up all the ones that make you cringe.
Well, usually if we're on an immersion, if we're doing a retreat and I hear a man say, I'm trying to figure it out, I just start giggling quietly. I'm like, oh, here we go.
I think everyone knows that at this point. Yeah. Well, let's break it down a little bit. You can never just try, and you're never going to figure it out. Let's start with that premise.
Go, Michael.
You're doing it or you're not doing it. I remember Tony Robbins had this whole exercise where people would say this thing and be like, all right, try to pick that chair up.
Trying, yeah.
I'm trying. Yeah. You're either picking it up or you're not. Right. So we really have to eliminate the word try from the vocabulary. And then you will never figure it out. Things are never going to go according to plan. Things are always going to come up that shift the trajectory of how things are showing up. You can never, if you were to look at your life and rewind, you would see it written as the most beautifully crafted novel you've ever read in your life. So you have to trust that the how will show up, that there's unseen forces organizing when you choose, when you decide, when you make a claim. Trying to figure it out swims around in that energy neutrality we talk about. There's no clear definition. There's no focused attention. So and I think Russell can speak to this, that the how is none of your business.
Right. I mean, that's law of attraction 101, right? Abraham Hicks talks about like your job is to decide the what. The how is none of your business, right? The saying God works in mysterious ways. Obviously, from that divine perspective, a lot more resources and avenues than your little mind can possibly think of, than my little mind could possibly think of. So what business am I having to try to figure out the how? Just get out of the way, right? And, this living in your head, it's mental masturbation, guys. You're just you're just fondling yourself without any real procreation of a solution.
Yeah.
Right. It's stop. If you're the solution is not cerebral. The solution is
say that again.
The solution is not cerebral, right?
Ooh.
And
oh wait, that's a new one, folks.
You like that one?
Hold on, I'm loving it right now. The solution is not cerebral. Aho.
And we talk about in Ignite and your work in network, we talk about lower mental and upper mental, right?
Yep.
They're different planes of existence. They're different planes of thought.
Yep.
And lower mental, this or that, black or white. If you're stuck in lower mental, there is no solution.
Right.
You have to open yourself to other possibilities. That's getting out of your head and getting into your heart. Get out of the attic and move down to the living room.
Yeah.
Right? Get out of your head, get into your heart. And what have we shown now that the heart is your actual brain?
Yeah, there's more neural cells in the heart than there is in the brain. The field of the heart extends 6 feet beyond the body, where the brain and nervous system extends, I think, 1 foot to 2 feet. So it forms this toroidal field of energy around the body. But your heart picks up on the signaling in the environment before your brain ever does. So it's the primary force.
More neural cells in your heart than in your brain. Now I want to call myself out because I just said, think about that. How about feel about that?
Right. Or tune into it.
Tune into it. Right.
Yeah. And just to bring in that, go ahead, finish what you're saying. But I want to bring in the physiology of this.
Yeah. The last piece, I think it was Einstein who said that the problems of man cannot be solved by the same state of mind that created them.
Consciousness that
something like
them.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, look, get out of your head. Yeah. Go ahead.
This is a huge pitfall because I don't know about you men out there, but I know I can spin on things and replay things and just mull over things. This is where, again, that emotion gets stuck and I'll just get in this cycle. So this is what we say by, living in your head and trying to figure it out. If you ever find yourself trying to make a decision and you're making a pro and con list and whatever one has more on it, you're going to choose. No, that's living in the lower mind. That's living in the head. These are when your questions are this or that, why or why not, yes or no, just know that's the consciousness level that you're making that decision from. So you can assess where you are in your consciousness by the questions you're asking yourself. Why me? Why not me? There's never
Horrible
enough
questions.
of this. These are all energy poor questions, right? Like you're in breakdown at this point. Do I do this or that? You're in a more energy. You're living in your head. Do I break up with her or do I not? Right? These very polarized kind of answers. And usually you're in a state of some kind of stress physiology when you're trying to quote unquote figure it out. So as Russell talks about tapping into the heart and this higher order physiology, there's literally a change to our whole biochemistry when this happens, when you're in a more open and relaxed state where there's connection to the higher parts of the brain, the frontal lobe, our prefrontal cortex, and the heart, and they're actually in synchrony together, and there's coherence. And when we're in coherence, we're in a state of gratitude. And in a state of gratitude, we're in a state of appreciation. We're in a state of love. These are some of the highest levels of consciousness. Now try taking your problem and asking it from that place and seeing what comes through, what solutions come through, right? Classically, even in our posture, when you put your head in your hands and you slump over, you're stretching the spinal cord, which further takes blood flow and nerve activity away from the higher centers of the brain, which makes finding solution and possibility that much harder, right? So we have to open up our physiology, bring our arms, our head back, or take deep breaths, open up that chest, get movement in the spinal column and the nerves, and open up the channels literally to what's possible.
So slumped over, head down, closes off blood flow to the higher centers of the brain. Kind of like if
Up
you're
to
hunched over
40%.
a phone or a computer all day.
Yep. Pretty much every
Weird
posture that the modern day person has, from sitting in their chair eating breakfast to sitting in their car in traffic to sitting on their phone to sitting on their computer to sitting in their car back in traffic to sitting at the table again for dinner to sitting on the couch. Maybe they'll lay down. Right. We are battling gravity, and as we say in men's work and in reality, gravity is fucking fierce and will pull you back down every time. Yeah.
As another component, we'll get into relationship stuff more in future episodes, but as another component of living in your head, let's say there's a conflict in your relationship with your woman and she's being emotional.
This is going to be good.
She's being emotional and you try to solve it logically because you're either right or wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's not black or white. That's the lower mental. And gentlemen, you already know the answer to this. How well does it work out for you to try to address an emotional issue with a woman logically? That's when we say intelligent things like just calm down.
You're wrong.
Yeah. Instead of defending and deflecting and justifying, what if you ask yourself, what is she feeling? What is she really feeling? Don't make it about right or wrong. It's like, where's she coming from? What's she really feel? And maybe from that higher mind perspective, when we open ourselves to that, we can go, wow, she really feels unsafe, unseen, unheard, whatever it may be. And you can address that, not the words coming out of her mouth. That. Could that change things?
The problem is always 3 layers deeper.
Right.
Always. It's not what she's showing you. A woman doesn't show you directly. She may direct anger or energy or some kind of emotion at you, but what's really going on is what's underneath because she doesn't feel safe. And just to be clear, this is not easy work being present. I mean, we've devoted entire calls in our Brotherhood on how to hold the king energy and be present, especially when there's a wild storm happening around you, specifically in your relationship. Right. Not easy work, important work. And if you can have the perspective as a man that you're the place your woman is coming to feel safe, to be that wild storm, to be emotional because she knows you're not going to withdraw love from her, does that change how you show up?
Yeah. Again, we can go a whole episode.
We will
on this. But that's just another aspect of living in your head.
Yep.
Get out of your head, get into your heart. What's number 4?
Yeah. And one last thing I just want to say to make this relevant on that, because we want to bring it in different contexts. For those men out there that are entrepreneurs, sales leaders, business owners, even corporate executives, when you're in those big deals, right? There's the facts and the data, right? The lower mind stuff. I mean, a deal needs to make sense, but usually there's an instinct there. There's a knowing. You know what's going on in those deals. You're tuning in and making the decision, actually, just to unpack it for a second, from an emotional place. You are actually tuning in, is this what's right? There's what's on paper, and that needs to match. But you're tuning in, and we're asking, do the same thing in your relationship. It's not about the facts. And that takes connecting in the emotion, having an emotional intelligence and bandwidth. So I just want to add that in to make it relevant to more men that can relate to that in a different context.
Yeah. Nice.
Number 4, this is a fun one. And this might date us a little bit as well because it is a movie reference, but the Groundhog's Day. Living the same life over and over again. Waking up at the same time, eating the same thing, getting in the same car, going to the same job, going to the same places, and calling that a life, and waking up 10, 20 years later and be like, what the fuck just happened?
What's the definition of insanity?
Well, here's Einstein again, right? Doing the same thing over and over and again, expecting a different result. Yep. Again, the definition of energy neutral. This is it. The ho-hum, the home drums, the meh.
Right.
Going through the motions. How many of you in relationship are just going through the motions? How many of you in your job are going through the motions? How many of you in your finances are just going through the motions? The never-ending cycle. Another month. Here we go. Another reset of the cycle. Again, and then time just marches on. And here we are.
Stuck in a rut, right? The daily grind. These are terms that we've come to accept as normal. There's nothing normal about it. Living a life unfulfilled is not something to aspire to. In fact, I believe one of the greatest sins that we can, and sin just means mistake, missing the mark, that we can give into in our lives is dying with our potential still inside of us. You talked about, Michael, in the first episode, how you were raised energy neutral, but you knew there was more. You knew you were meant for more. And I think that spark exists in every man on the planet.
Yep.
And again, let's go spirituality, religion, whatever you want to call it, to that we were nothing but dirt and clay before God breathed life into us, according to Bible, according to Christianity, right? So to inspire is literally the breath of God breathing life into us. That spark in your heart, that flame calling you to more, was put there by something greater than you.
Yep.
To deny it is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. To think that you're not meant for more, to think that you're not worthy of more, right? It was like, what's the saying? What would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Right.
Like, be willing to step up. Is there a chance of failure? Oh, it's almost a fucking guarantee.
Right.
But failure is a part of success, not the opposite of it. It is a necessity.
Absolutely necessity.
On the journey to success. Right? So, I share this when I heard David Goggins say this, that like I had tears streaming down my face because I feel it, that his greatest fear, right? He talks about, and you guys can find the video on YouTube, but he talks about, he's now like Navy SEAL, accomplishing every military branch, ultra marathon runner, world champion pull-ups, blah, blah, blah. And if he didn't do any of that before he did all that, when he's working for a roach spraying company and weighs 250, 300 pounds, whatever, and, fat piece of shit, as he calls it. Yeah. That if he stayed in that life and died, got to heaven, and standing in front of God, and God goes, okay, Navy SEAL, ultra marathon runner, and he goes, wait, God, that's not me. He goes, no, that's who you were supposed to be. To me, that hits hard. That's a gut punch.
Yeah.
It's like, if I, end my life and it's like, what happened? Like I gave these to you. This was your mission. You were the one who was supposed to speak to the masses. You were the one who was supposed to inspire that person who didn't commit suicide, but went on to accomplish great things and touch thousands of lives because of you. But you never took the chance. You never stepped out of that comfort zone. You never ventured out of that little box that you call a life. How disappointing. To feel the disappointment of God, to feel the disappointment of myself at the end of my life is one of the greatest pains I can imagine. So Groundhog's Day is a fucking poison. Groundhog's Day is a curse. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to bring in another context on this because it's relevant in my life and I imagine for others as well. This Groundhog's Day, especially around family and children and having just wife and family, and the word I'll use is busyness, being full of tasks and needing to get here and there, feeling sometimes more like an Uber driver than a father, right? But I'm also, coaching baseball and involved in the school and doing IgKnight and all these things. But it's like, man, as soon as that kid's off school, it's like off to the races to get as much done as I can. And then there's a rhythm and the things that have happened. And don't get us wrong here. Their rhythm and discipline and routine are absolutely imperative. It's when that becomes the consciousness is where it becomes the problem. Right. So I find I don't go ahead.
Distractions. I want to add distractions to that.
Oh yeah. Oh, social
Society
media
wants
phones.
us to stay in Groundhog's Day, right?
Yep. Don't pay attention.
The powers that be,
in quotes,
want us to be distracted and disempowered. We're easy to control that way.
Yep. You're literally stuck in your phone. You don't see what's going on. So this drug, it's a drug of busyness where there's this false sense of progress, but really it's just motion. It's like running in circles. Like you're expending a lot of energy, but not actually going anywhere.
You're running in place.
And you're tired. And that's the thing. This Groundhog's Day, you're tired. You're overwhelmed. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. And I'm like, where did that week go? Right. And it's just, but then I'm like, did things actually progress in my life? Now, thankfully, I have this work and community and ways to keep myself accountable to not allow that to happen for too long of a period of time. Right. Yeah. And by the way, just a tenet of our work is, and I think you mentioned this on the first episode, this isn't something, these challenges to eliminate. It's to keep them on the edge of your sword, the tip of your sword, and to fuck up less. And when you do, clean it up quicker. I mean, really, that's the recipe. Just the awareness. Then you don't do it as often. You're not cleaning up your mess as often. And when you do, be a man. Own it. Accountability.
Right.
Take full ownership. That goes a long way in fulfilling that ideal of having integrity as a man. But I just wanted to bring in that context around family because this Groundhog Day, and I'll just say, man, I literally have to put my kids' teachers' emails through Chat GPT and say, can you give me a summary of this and tell me the key points I need to know? Because there's just so much to keep track of.
Right.
And I love her emails too. And it's beautiful and what we get. But it's just, again, how many emails do you get in a day? How many things do you have to follow up on? How many things are just needing your attention?
Right.
Right.
You mentioned a proponent of that Groundhog's Day is just being tired, just feeling so overwhelmed, so exhausted. I think what amplifies that fatigue is feeling purposelessness.
Yeah.
Not being mission driven.
Mission based. Yeah.
If you're exhausted and you've moved the marker towards your mission being fulfilled, if you're living with purpose, then you're regenerated from that.
Yep.
Right. I don't think that fatigue hits nearly as hard. It's when we're in Groundhog's Day, we're living without purpose.
Yeah.
That's
when you're
so
fulfilling
hard.
your mission, you will stay up day and night and be energized by it. Right. It's like stress physiology and passion physiology are almost the same thing. It's the story that we apply to it. So absolutely. Well, let's move on to this last one and kind of bring bring this home here.
Mm-hmm.
We call this one the check boxes, and what we mean by that is having all the metrics or check boxes of life ticked off, but yet still feeling unfulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
You have the wife, you have the marriage, you have the family, you have the car, you have the business, you have the money, you have the vacation, you have the homes, you have all the things that we've been told are the metrics of success.
The metrics of being a man.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. And yet you're unhappy. And we put this one last because this is the ultimate pain. I did what they said to, again, did what the program said to do. And, still not happy. Right. And we've heard this so many times in the personal growth circles, right? It's not the stuff. It's not the material. It's, the money is not going to make you happy. I mean, money does nice things for sure, but it amplifies who you already are. So if you're unhappy, you're just going to be more unhappy, frankly.
Saying is money doesn't buy happiness, but you can rent it for a little while. but honestly, guys, we've met 6 and 7 figure earners. We've got them in our brotherhood.
Yeah,
that were miserable. Why? Because they didn't have a mission, because they didn't have a purpose, because they were unfulfilled, because these shadows, those core beliefs from 0 to 7 years old were still festering like an infection.
Right.
That were,
and by the way, there's a fallacy.
Yeah. Draining energy from their lives. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a fallacy that, when you're at that level, you don't have problems. No, your problems are bigger for sure. Right. So no one is immune to that. I cut you off there. Go ahead, finish the thought. I just jumped in on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's money. Money can buy distractions. Money can buy dopamine.
Let's talk about dopamine, because that's a lot of these check boxes fill that void.
The biggest drug addiction in our society today. It's not cocaine, it's alcohol, it's dopamine.
Yeah. Everyone is vying for that, aren't they?
Yeah. Fascinating book, The Molecule of More, which talks about dopamine and how we're addicted to it.
And the thing is that pathway has literally been hijacked in our brain, right? They've cracked the code. Again, social media, corporations, big food, big pharma, you name it, has cracked the code on how to hijack your dopamine system. And the messed up thing about it is when you actually do things that would release your internal innate dopamine through completing tasks or feeling a sense of completion, it doesn't compare. It's like having, like, in a way, like regular sugar to high fructose corn syrup. I mean, high fructose corn syrup is how many times sweeter than regular sugar, right?
Right.
Where you now have a receptor that's been altered in the brain, and sugar is not even sweet anymore, right? Where your food, if we want to call it that, has been so modified that it tricks your brain into being addicted to it and wanting more, but there's zero nutritional value. Right. Same things with the check boxes. It's like those things inherent in themselves don't bring happiness, don't bring fulfillment. So and I'll just wrap up by saying, as a king, as a man who is a king in his life, you are stewarding a legacy. You're bringing forth something so much greater than your material possessions. The hearse does not have a luggage rack. You're not taking any of it with you.
Right.
And if your identity is associated with success through those material objects, then that's going to be a very unfulfilling life. Again, why it's a big pitfall to be aware of in this work.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's any thought of once I get or once I accomplish or once I have the fill in the blank, then I'll be happy.
Right.
It's a lie. There is nothing outside of yourself that is going to bring you happiness. That has to be an internal process. And that comes through your identity. That comes through your mission. That comes through your values. That comes from knowing who the fuck you really are. And if it's based on something transient outside of you, money, cars, houses, accolades, titles,
which are all very nice, by the way.
Yeah. Not saying they're not. But that's not your source of happiness, because all of those things can go away. And then who are you? Right? We witnessed this with a man in our brotherhood, when his, early time with us, his entire identity was wrapped up in his work.
Yeah.
His entire identity was wrapped up in his job and what he did and his role
And
as a
title.
leader. Thank God he did this work, because when this work being IgKnight, because when that job was no longer there, what would he have had? Nothing.
Right.
His whole world would have crashed down around him. But because
instead he was liberated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that job went away, he was liberated instead of destroyed.
Liberated instead of destroyed. I heard a lot of good things on this episode.
Because they came from you.
No, it was the cerebral one. Now I'm trying to remember exactly what was the wording.
The solution is not cerebral.
The solution is not cerebral. Beautiful. Can you actually give us a 30-second? Let's recap these 5 pains. Give your 30-second rundown, and we can tie this into the actionables that we always want to give at the end of how to work this. I can give it. We can ping pong if you want.
Yeah, you're challenging my memory skills.
No, let's do. Yeah. So the first one's being the pleaser, right? And trying to make everyone happy and realizing that no one's going to be happy, and it's driven from this need of self-worth, of needing to be acknowledged and feeling like we're loved.
The man who's a friend to everyone is an enemy to himself.
Yeah. We talked about being the lone wolf and how innately we are not lone wolves. That's not our nature as human beings. And this isolation, the intensity the extreme, and that can go to with suicide and the trail of pain that leaves.
Yeah.
And community being the antidote to that.
Yeah, I'd said earlier, lone wolf dies first. You just mentioned the extreme that can lead to suicide. I realize now that the completion of that sentence is a lone wolf dies first, and often by his own hand. Damn.
Living in your head, that was number 3. And this consciousness of the lower mind and this or that thinking, and the solution is not cerebral. And coming from your heart, and how that's actually the more of a brain than the brain is, and the intelligence of the heart and the field of the heart, and how to tap into that through the emotions and gratitude and appreciation and love as being the highest order, and the how is none of your business.
Yeah. Mental masturbation will not lead to the creation or procreation of anything of value.
And we talked about Groundhog's Day, right? And the energy neutrality of busyness and leading the same life and not fulfilling a mission and feeling tired and overworked and overwhelmed, and waking up however many years later and realizing all the potential that was unfulfilled.
Yeah, that's living without a mission, without purpose, and the tragedy of dying with those things still inside of you.
Yeah. And lastly, as we just talked about, this check boxes of life and having a successful but unfulfilled life, and the wrong metrics for gauging what fulfillment actually is in your life. And it's the art of fulfillment, and it's knowing what makes you happy, and it's not the stuff, and you can't take it with you. And this is the ultimate pain, because if you're living by someone else's map, and many of us through our families, our fathers, are playing out someone else's map of our life. We'll get more into that in a future episode of how to actually create that map for yourself. But these are the 5 pains. And as far as an actionable, the number one thing I would say is go through these, listen to this episode. Where do you fit in? Again, you're going to have aspects of this in all aspects of every one of these. Which one hits you the deepest? Which one where you're like, okay, if I had to pick one, this is the one I know I express the most in my life.
Yeah. This is the gut punch.
Exactly. And this is, again, it's raw, it's honest. This is your own work. Look in the mirror. It's hard, especially when this hits on guilt or shame, or those deep places that you're scared to look. We want to hope our voices provide a beacon, or as Russell would like to say, a clarion call for you men out there, that we're here to help lead the charge, but we can't do it alone. We're here to stand shoulder to shoulder with you men, whether that's virtually or in person, whatever it may be. As brothers, we rise up together. So
Yes.
I'm complete with that.
Yeah. Same. Well said, brother.
All right, man.
Well
Let's
said.
get after it.
All right, man. See you next time.